Can you start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your business and what brings you here today?
Yeah, my name is Cara Alford, and I have an art consulting business called Allegory Art Consulting. And through my work, I sort of have two facets of my business. The first is traditional art consulting, where I help individuals and businesses source artwork for their homes. I help people develop out their collections and hone in on their personal style. And then the other facet of my business is sort of studio management art consulting, more artist consulting, where I work with artists on different levels, helping them manage the administrative side of their businesses.
That's amazing. I feel like so many artists need that. Can you break down if an artist, were to work with you, can you take that a step further? So like what all would the administrative kind of tasks that you do be? Like how would that look like?
Yeah, I try to provide different levels of access
Hmm.
where you can work with me depending on your budget because I have a hard time taking money from artists. So it's a really specific kind of time in your career, I think, where you can invest in sort of the studio management support. So, with that in mind, when I was developing out my offerings, I tried to kind of provide a range of services for artists. So I have the ability to take on full-time retainer studio artist clients, sorry, studio management clients, where I am essentially your full-time studio manager, where I oversee every single bit of your day-to-day practices. I'm all up in your emails. I'm the main point of contact for any business opportunities that come through, commissions. I keep you on schedule with projects, commissions, exhibitions, submissions, all of that good stuff. Also, the annoying things of like running errands or ordering supplies, I do all of that too. So we develop a really thoughtful project management, studio management program that works best for me and my clients at the retainer level where I can oversee their practices really deeply and intimately. And then I have project based support where I work with artists where they have a very clear beginning and end to a project. So this will be if they are applying for a grant or working on an application materials for some kind of project that they're applying for, or it's developing out websites or creating marketing plans or developing out a calendar of exhibition submission proposals, that kind of stuff with deadlines. My that project-based offering has a very clear beginning and end point. Oftentimes I've seen artists that I've worked with at that level have then hired me again for another project or have used me for this next offering, which is sort of a one-on-one coaching consultation call. So these are really on the artist's schedule. They can hit me up and schedule a meeting and we go over whatever they want during this allotted period of time. I let the artist do all the talking and then we follow up with a list of action items. So those are sort of like one-off opportunities for people to work with me. I've also recently started doing these sort of monthly hybrid studio management opportunities for artists who maybe don't need the full time, but they want kind of a part time support in their studio. And that's been really fun to kind of see that develop out further as a need for artists of work from me or what you're going to be getting from me. But it still keeps people on track and provides that sort of sense of accountability, I think, that they have in their studio.
Yeah, I love that and I love that you're meeting artists where they are because I think that is something. I mean, I'm in such agreement with you. It's figuring out, I obviously don't want to like take money from artists, but we do have a business, so it's figuring out how do I best serve them and serve them in the way they are without, giving them more than they need if that's not financially where they are yet in their business. And so I love that you have all these different offerings. How did you get into this in the first place? Like how did you
Yeah.
end up doing this? What
Yeah,
is your
that's a great
background?
question. My background is actually in nonprofit arts management. Prior to starting Allegory, I was in that field since finishing grad school in 2011. Really spent my career advocating for artists, particularly emerging artists, supporting them and kind of providing this administrative support through my roles with different arts organizations. So when I left my most recent like real job, not to say Allegory isn't a real job, but when I left my most stable position. I was the executive director of Redux Contemporary Art Center, a nonprofit arts organization here in Charleston. I was there for 5 years doing this kind of work. I left for a out of the sector opportunity working with a startup organization in New York that was sort of arts adjacent. And it was very clearly not a fit for me almost immediately. So I spent some time reflecting on that and thinking about these services that I have been providing for my whole career and trying to figure out if there was a way to make that into a real job. It was a facet of Allegory that I was offering, but it wasn't the primary pillar of my business until I really dove into it and started realizing that there really was this need for this kind of studio support. Yeah, so it kind of happened organically. And now the traditional art consulting part of Allegory Art Consulting is definitely churning, but the artist support is really the primary service that I offer.
Yeah, and I think artists really need that. Something I do kind of want you to dive into a little bit more too, just for artists who do want to know more about the traditional side. Can you kind of explain what that looks like working with clients, working with artists? How do you place artwork? Can you just share for artists that are
Yeah.
interested in working with a consultant in that sense?
Yeah, interesting approaching it from a artist perspective. So typically when I work with my artist consultant, traditional art consulting clients, I have sort of a multi-step process that I do. And the first step is really kind of dialing in and honing in on their individual style. So that sometimes involves just me going to their home and seeing the work that they have in their house, picking up on their interior design aesthetic and getting a feel for that. And then we can kind of dive right in. Oftentimes, our people will hire me because they don't know what their style is. So we
Mhm.
go through a lot of different processes and trying to sort of like dial that in. My favorite is working with people who we can go to galleries and museums and artist studios and get to learn a little bit more about work that they have never even thought about including in their collection. And so we spend all this time together really figuring out what that looks like for them. So to the artist would really come in at this point where I have to know about you to be on your radar or for
Mhm.
your work to be on my radar. I always recommend just following on social media and emailing and sharing your work with consultants just so that they have it in the back of their brain when they're pulling for clients. I tag and pull work that I think is interesting anytime an artist emails me their portfolio and save it to different folders that have those keywords that I pull from for when I'm pulling work for my clients. So I think that really it's about building relationships at the end of the day. It's about making yourself known and putting your work in front of the people that you want to see it,
Is
taking
there
them.
a kind of proper way that you would recommend artists getting in front of consultants? Is there a way you would want to be approached?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've seen it be very aggressive and forward where you're really confident behind your
Mhm.
ask. I think that can be a little off putting, but I think it's really just about presenting yourself in a really professional light. And, like you mentioned, tagging people in things like I can't even tell you how many times I've like, and not just in my current role, but in past jobs where people would just tag every gallery in Charleston hoping to be seen or wherever I was living at the time. And I don't think that that's necessarily effective because it's really passive. And I think that you really need to be professional with your approach and intentional. Your work has to align with the work that that person does. Or like if you're pitching to galleries or trying to get work with an art consultant and your work is so far out of left field that doesn't relate to anything that maybe you've seen that I share or post or present to my clients or have had included in projects, like probably not going to be a good fit for me moving forward. But I think at the end of the day, maybe I just don't know that that is there. And if you present to me like a really thoughtful, clean PDF attachment with a gentle email that just says, "Hi, I'm based in this place and I am a painter and I want you to have my work on your radar. Thanks for keeping me in mind for future projects." I will definitely reply to you and save that portfolio.
I think that's really helpful to know because especially with art consultants too, where it's a waiting game, I think it's good to know how do I approach them? How do I do it professionally? And agreed. I think people don't always know the best way to do it. So I think that's some really helpful advice with kind of your work with clients on the traditional art consulting side. Are there any trends that you're seeing in interiors with art that's interesting to you or anything that you think are on their way out? Are you noticing more frames, large scale, small scale, anything? I mean, I'm sure you work with so many people. Is there anything that stands out though with
Yeah,
trends?
that's a really good question. And I'm like racking my brain in my mind right now because I have so many different kinds of clients too. Like I've got people who are trying to work on a really, really tight budget, work with what they
Hmm.
have. And then I have people who have no budget and are furnishing second homes.
Right.
So, but I do think that there is sort of this reclaiming moment. So like, using work that you do have and reimagining it, whether it's reframing it or rehanging it. I've been doing that a lot with my clients, is sort of reimagining works in their collection of what they already have. I also do think large scale is like always been and will always be super hot.
Hmm.
I think that that moment in any kind of setting can really elevate the space. I guess something that I would love to see more of is large scale work that doesn't have to be framed. Large scale work sort of like presented in its final space or final presentation method. Because, oftentimes when I'm really trying to find one like killer piece for a client, you have to consider the price of the art, but then also the price of framing, because that's very important.
I think it's also nice to know that you work with such a variety of clients. I think artists hearing that too, it's not like, oh, I need to have one exact type of thing she needs. It's like you will pull from the artist when you work with a client that they fit. So I think that's just really good insight for people to hear how you work.
Yeah, I also work with like all kinds of artists too, like people who sell their work at markets for like $30 a canvas,
Hmm.
to gallery artists that are like $30,000, So I think that that's really important, is sort of like mixing that high and low in
Hmm.
the work, and helping people discover new artists that are just like not on their radar. I love to pull from all different parts of artist careers and stuff. I think it's a nice balance.
I really love that. It's nice to hear that too. I think artists need to hear that, your work can fit next to all these other types of work too. It's just, are you the right piece person for this place? So
Alignment.
alignment. You're saying it better than I am. Um, Thinking about your work and these coaching calls and different types of things you do with clients, what are questions you get asked frequently from artists or some common challenges people are facing?
Oh, wow. Good question. I mean, the number one problem or concern or issue that people always want help with, no matter where you are in your career, is pricing. And I feel like this is like a topic that has rippled through the art world forever. So, yeah, I mean, like helping artists determine the cost or the value of their work is something that I do spend a lot of time with them on. Yeah, that's definitely the number one question. The other big thing is just how to elevate these sales and capitalize on any kind of growth in their career or traction that they may have going for them, or whatever momentum is moving at that time, whether they're getting a lot of followers on social media or they're coming off of an exhibition, is how to ride that wave and really monetize their work. So I like to work with people to kind of help do both of those things.
What is one piece of advice you would give to emerging artists, or I guess artists in general, that are hoping to work with consultants like you?
Continue to focus on growing your practice and getting yourself out there. My services aren't really for every artist. You really kind of have to be at this point where you need that kind of support. So I have the sort of like lower level accessible options, as like for those, getting advice from me. But I
Mhm.
think if you're trying to bring on somebody like me or any kind of studio manager in any capacity, you have to really focus on your business and growing your business and keeping it successful and momentum going.
What makes an artist stand out to you? So you personally, and this you can take this however you want, both visually, but also, what makes you think like, okay, this artist has got it, like they got it going on.
That's a good question. You're asking really great questions.
Well, I'm like, this is all selfish. I want to
Hey,
know.
happy to share the wisdom. I mean, if you walked into my house right now, you would be like, whoa, I have so much different kind. The artwork in my home is very eclectic, I will say. Collect all different kinds of work. But I think what really at the core of it all is I want to see something new. I want to see a fresh take on whatever it is you're trying to do. Art has existed forever. So, what is your approach? It's hard to really come up with a concept that's completely individual, but when you're able to dial in on your personal aesthetic and be able to present something in a new light, that's interesting. I want to look at work that makes me think, whether it's about the application of material, the subject matter. I weirdly love like text based work, like
Mhm.
incorporating text into work. The approach for that needs to be fresh and interesting. That's what draws me into that. And then you add context, of course. It's like, what am I looking at? What's the narrative being presented to me? And where am I viewing this? And among what else am I viewing this? I think those are important questions to ask. So that can be like, if you're developing a collection of work, the work should be cohesive, but each work should still be individual. So how does this one look or represent something different and interesting than the other work?
A lot of artists ask me about developing a style, but then how specifically do they need to stick to that style? What are your thoughts on artists, painting one subject matter or really sticking with one medium or kind of putting themselves in a lane versus, kind of bouncing around a little bit more? And I know there's obviously gray area between that black and white answer, but what would you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's merit to both. I think that, you should have a personal style. You should have something where somebody looks at a work and it's like, oh, that is so and so. It's like very clearly. But at the same time, like you need to enjoy that and you need to be able to create work that inspires you, because if you aren't inspired by your own work, then people are going to be able to tell. And I like it when, like I said, I like to see something new. So I think you should do whatever it is that you're interested in. You have a shell on your shirt, you do the seashells, make people know that that's what you are. But then maybe you should start doing another subject matter too, once you have kind of made yourself known for that body of work, and then venture out there, but then circle back to the shells and you
Yeah.
kind of remind people that that's your humble beginning. I think that there's a problem these days with oversaturation, of whatever you're doing. And I see a lot of artists do this and they have a hard time stepping away from the comfort zone of creating the work that sold and the work that's paying their bills and that people seem to really like. But chances are, if you're making that work, people are going to like what you do next too. And if they
Yeah.
don't, go back to it. But
Right.
I really think I like to see artists constantly evolving, but also to have that sort of like nod to what is their bread and butter or what is their signature, I guess you could say.
I agree. And I think some artists, I know you work with Leah Burt LeBear, and I feel
Yeah.
like she's an artist who, yes, has some subject matter she comes to, but she also just has a specific hand. And I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of artists whose technique can carry from subject to subject, or even the themes that they're painting can go from subject to subject and work. And so I think that's something too. A lot of artists, I don't think, give themselves enough credit for just how they create and like the way they work the brush or
Totally.
whatever it is.
Yeah, I think with Leah too in particular, she's not afraid to step outside of
Hmm.
what is she's like quote unquote known for. She takes a lot of risks because she feels it. It's like something she needs to
Yeah.
express and get put out on the paper. And I think a lot of artists hold themselves back from that experience because they're so, like I said before, like they're so used to creating work under the umbrella of what sells and what they have a history of selling. So there is that sort of like sense of vulnerability there that you need to put yourself out there and, take the risk, because chances are if you have this thread of, your hand in the work, people are going to be interested and want to kind of see what's next and potentially collect that first body of work that you made in that new subject matter or using that new technique or whatever. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about dialing in on your personal aesthetic, but then keeping it fresh and mixing it up. And I mean, I'm not an artist, but I would imagine you would need to create something different to stay inspired. So for sure.
Definitely. And I'm completely with you. I think people will generally follow you to the next thing you move towards. I personally think you always have the safety net. It's not like if you stop
Totally.
painting seashells, if you paint them a year later, it's not like people have completely moved on. Like generally, if they sell at some point, they're probably going to keep selling later. So, take
Exactly.
the risk where you can.
Exactly.
I'd love to ask you kind of one more question just on the marketing front. You're working with a lot of artists. How do you recommend artists continue to grow? Like maybe they've gotten a little bit of a following, or maybe they did really well at a show, but what do you recommend? I mean, I'm not going to say overall, but how do you recommend artists grow, get in front of more of their ideal customer, and just continue to grow their business if they're at a plateau or something like that?
Yeah. A good question. I want to start before I answer, put this out there that I am not a marketing person,
Mhm.
but I do observe a lot. So I see what I'm interested in and what trends I'm seeing like on social media or through email. And I think that I try to encourage my clients and other artists to abide by these practices. And I don't think I'm doing a good job of it personally on my own business, but
It's a
I
common
can
problem.
sort of, yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's really consistency. It's consistency in sharing things, it's consistency in email, making sure that you are on people's minds sort of at all costs. I also think that it's a lot of collaboration, whether that's showing up in person, supporting somebody at their show, sharing content from their show. It's working together with brands, it's working with other artists. It's really kind of that communal support. And I think that through that, it sort of like continues to happen. I also think there's a lot of merit in paid advertisement. I think that, especially for like numbers and growth that way, investing in some kind of like marketing strategy, whether it's like diving into meta ads or boosting a post on Instagram, or like subscribing to like a legitimate newsletter subscription service where the newsletters look legit and tight and have all the links that work. I think that that's like super important too. Substack's a big thing too. I feel like people are really interested in these days. I think there's a lot of organic growth that happens there. I've heard that curators and consultants and stuff will be on there and find other artists through recommendations on Substack. Like not even like, just someone forwarded me this email or whatever. It's like the app itself is doing that work
Yeah.
too. So really just kind of like consistently growing your network and maintaining the communication and putting yourself out there and not being afraid to, be a little vulnerable on the apps and on in email and really putting yourself and your business out there like that.
Yeah, which is easier said than done, but
100%.
I
100%.
completely agree. Do you think there's a way to make it as an artist, like old school, artists just kind of hand off their work to a gallery and call it a day? Do you think that's possible now, or do you think like as artists we really do have to have, a presence and I guess a following in some way?
Yeah, I'm gonna say yeah, because
Mhm.
I have a client right now who doesn't sell any work on her website. She only shows through galleries. And I think that, and she's tremendously successful. And I think that that world definitely still exists. I think that it's just a different approach to these tools that we have ourselves. And, she found her niche by, putting herself out there in the old school way, connecting with people face to face and, talking about her work, presenting her work, bringing people into her studio and just networking with the right people. So, I think that's opportunity that is out there. What's unique and cool about this world that we're in right now is that we have these tools at our fingertips that are free to be able to share your work and put it out there to a whole new community, people who don't live anywhere near you. And those people will be able to identify and find your work and support and hopefully buy. But I think that that old school method works. I also think that people see being in galleries as a measure of success as an artist or a goal where they want to reach. And I think that there is a lot of, what's the word, like, I guess I don't know. There's a reason why that is sort of like this benchmark for success. But I think that whenever anybody approaches me and is like, I want to be represented by galleries, I always ask them why, because I think that a lot of people don't think about that, like the why. Like, is it because they want the clout, or is it because they think that the gallery will be able to do the marketing and the sales work stronger than they can, or is it just because that's what they think they should be doing?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times I think a lot of the work can sell itself through websites or social media, but if they're not ready to take that leap into managing their own sales and practice, then a gallery can be a really great opportunity for them.
No, but I
Question.
think it's good. There's so many benefits to galleries, but they're also not like the end all be all. And I feel like I do have, even some galleries, it's like you still have to do some of the legwork and it's expected that you do some of the marketing or show up or, what have you. And so I think that's a conversation I have with artists a lot too, is if you want to go the gallery route, wonderful. Why? Like, do
Why?
you want to do
Yeah,
it because you need to and it's going to be helpful for your business in a marketing sense, getting you in front of the right customers that you're not in front of, or clout, whatever? All of that's valid. But if it's just to do it because other people are doing it, you might not be successful. And again, alignment. Is it aligned with your
exactly.
customer, your goals?
And is the gallery that you have had on a pedestal for all these years really the right gallery for you and your work?
Mhm.
Does your work align with the kind of work that they put out
Right.
there? I think a lot of people just kind of get in their head about that and make that be the end all be all for success. It's a unique world that we're living in right now to be in the art market, to be able to take the reins of your own practice and make it what you want it.
Well, this has been so helpful. Can you share, if an artist wants to work with you or learn more about you, all the different ways that they can kind of start that conversation or learn more about you?
Totally. You can visit my website. I have book a free consultation call. So that first call is a really great way to learn a little bit about your struggles in your business and how I might be able to help. And for me to learn a little bit more about what you're doing right now and if there is a way for us to work together. Also, you can follow me on Instagram. You can see the type of work that I do with clients, both my studio management clients and my individual art consulting clients, and see if there's any avenues for us to be able to work together through that.
Love. Well, thank you so much. This was really informative and it was great chatting with you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks again for having me. This is great. I'm excited to hear it all and to be a part of it.